What's up, people? It's been a very, very long time. So, my apologies to my regular viewers and subscribers and supporters. I've been extremely busy on the family front. I've also got a haircut, so new look, new year, nearly new look. And yeah, so thanks for bearing with me. I hope this video finds you guys well, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at. Today, I'm going to talk about football. I've talked about football a couple of times, I think, in previous videos, and I want to delve a little bit into why I think football is a potentially extremely powerful tool, or a particularly powerful environment that we can use as parents, as caregivers, to help our children, and in particular boys, to develop themselves, to thrive and to succeed in life in general. So one of the reasons that I've been so busy recently is that I've got two sons, one's 7, one's 6, just turned 6 recently, and both of them play football. So my eldest, he's been playing football for a year and a bit now, started last in 2024, and he's a good little player, and last year, up till now, I've been spending most of the time driving him around to matches and supporting him and all that sort of stuff, and he's really coming on really, really well. And my youngest son now has just got to a point where he's able to start playing organised football as well. So he's joined a team, under 7s team, and I'm the coach. Turned out that I tried to shirk that responsibility, and I tried to, see if one of the other parents would do it, but no one was biting. And it got to a point where essentially with grassroots football, so this is not playing for Man United or Arsenal or whatever. This is grassroots football. There are many hundreds of thousands of clubs around the country that are just playing Saturday or Sunday football, and it's amateur, and the coaches are all usually parents. So a parent has to step up to coach, and no one was stepping up. And it got to a point where I thought, do you know what? Let me do it. And I'm doing it on my own, and that's fine, because that has kind of given me the opportunity to do this exactly in the way that I want to do it. Bringing out the inner dictator in me, if you like, but benevolent dictator. So anyway, because of that, now we've got training midweek, and then we've got matches on Saturday, and between those actual sessions and the organising and the contacting the parents and all that sort of stuff, I've just got very little time to do much else besides that. So it dawned on me that I might as well actually start talking about what I'm actually doing with the football stuff, because as I'm going to try and break down in a minute, there is a lot in football that is, like I said, there's a lot of deep theory and scientific research and concepts that I think, like I said, I think we can take all of these things, all of these ideas, and use them to make sure that football or any sport is something that can actually really contribute to our children coming into themselves and thriving and blossoming. So we used to, I think particularly in the Black community, some of us at least have got this tendency to sort of look down on sport, because we look at how well represented we are, how over-represented we are on the pitches, at least. Not so much in the management, well, definitely not in the management. I'm going to do a video about that at some point. But on the pitches, you look at any level of football, from grassroots, my experience is that we'll go to some small little village somewhere where there certainly are not very many Black people in that village. But the football team will have 1 or 2 on the football team, and of course, go all the way through the Premier League and the Football League and all that. I believe it's something like between 35 and 40% of all players are Black. Most of them are Black British as well. So there's this tendency that we have to say, oh yeah, you see, this is racism because, we get pushed into sport and music and entertainment and not into, whatever it might be. We're not pushed into academic routes or to become doctors or whatever. And I get that. There's obviously a lot to be discussed about that. But I think we go too far a little bit, and we sort of downplay those domains where we are actually achieving a high amount of success. And I don't think we should I wonder if there's like a part of us that thinks, oh, because these are things that are to do with our physical ability. Even though football sport is not just a physical, I would actually say, I'm going to break down in this video that sport is the vast majority of sporting success is all about the mental, and is all about the coordination in your, internal coordination and internal organization, not just your muscles and your ligaments and bones and stuff, but also your neurons. But we have this, I think there's a little bit of an not wanting to think of ourselves as, oh, we're just bits of meat that can run around on a football pitch, or we're just, we've just got this natural ability to sing and dance, and so that's what we're doing. But my approach to this is, listen, lean into that. It is a good thing if it is the case that black people, for example, from certain parts of the world have got a proclivity or an advanced ability in, sprinting, for example, maybe to do with fast twitch muscles, because that's what the fast twitch muscles are, the ones that really help you with explosive movements like sprinting. Or if it's a case with my people, more like, the East Africans, who've got that, that proclivity toward the stamina and the long distance running and so forth, that's a good thing. That's a beautiful thing. That's not all we are, though, but those are beautiful things. If we've got a predilection toward dance and rhythm and tonality and all that sort of stuff, that's a good thing. We should respect and laud our producers and our dancers and our rappers and our this, that, and the other. We should appreciate and celebrate them. That's not all we are, though, but we should celebrate that. And I think in all of these domains, whether it be music, football, any other kinds of sport, I'm going to talk about now how, when you actually dig into it, we can use these things to, for our betterment, and particularly for the progress and the development of our young people. So I've got a few headings here. First thing what I'll do, I'll put the notes for this on my Substack. I really need to get back on the Substack. Shout out to all of my Substack subscribers. Make sure you subscribe. It's eliwananda.substack.com. Shout out particularly for those of you guys who are paid supporters, and shout out for you guys who buy me a coffee occasionally and so forth. Really appreciate that. Helps to, just keep it ticking over, and while I'm in this phase where I'm not perhaps doing as much as I would like to on the content front because of all this stuff, So let's talk about skill acquisition and motor development. So as I've been getting into, how do I coach? What do I do? How should I organize the coaching sessions? The more I watch these videos on YouTube and, study it out, the more I really see that there is an enormous amount of depth in there. So there's a lot of scientific research, for example, into what's involved in learning a skill acquisition. And so to give you an example, if you look at the average football training session, you will see a lot of people, children and adults, standing around while there's a coach talking, telling them where to go, stand here. There'll be cones standing around on some posts, and then the children, will be waiting in a line for their turn to then go and perform a particular set of moves or whatever it might be, and then they'll be doing that over and over and over again. These are drills, right? These are isolated drills. And as I've been studying, I've been coming across a field of, I don't know if you call it a field of study or research into movement science and skill acquisition that's called ecological dynamics. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But what this body of research suggests is that these isolated drills are poor ways of actually developing skill that can be transferred into matches. Weaving in between cones, zigzagging in between cones, makes you better at zigzagging between cones. Doing those agility ladders, those ladders that you have, and then you see, children doing the, stepping through the ladders. Those things help you to step through ladders. You can get faster and faster at stepping through ladders. Great. But the research suggests it does not translate, it does not transfer into actual increased agility. And I've seen this. I've seen this, and I'm fully convinced about this. So my eldest, I remember we went to play a match. They're a good team, very good team, and they went to play a match against. There's this kind of like you have these kind of companies that do these sort of academies where you pay, and they're usually set up by ex-professional footballers or even current professional footballers. And then the idea is that, you get specialized coaching, and then scouts will come to the games and watch. And so a lot of parents and children, but certainly the parents, are in the football basically for their children to get into the academies and eventually become professional footballers, which is fine. But I personally think that the focus needs to be I think too many people have got that as their primary and maybe only focus. And they forget actually that there is a lot more to sport than just becoming one of the 1% who are going to become the next Bukayo Saka or Ebere Eza or, whoever it might be. So they played against one of these sort of academy teams. And in the pre-match warm-up, I remember all the parents were stood there watching the other team. And they were doing these really like amazing looking drills and step overs and passing routines, like one pass there, then the other one ran there. It all looked fantastic. And we thought, oh my God, we're going to get absolutely hammered. When the match started, not in Nagoso. When the match started, our boys held them. Were more than a match for this team of apparently specially selected, academy prospects. When it came to the actual match, in the matches, you can't, the other team is not going to stand there and let you do your pre-arranged little triangles. Like, you go over there, move there, then I'm going to run over there and then do that. Then I'm going to do my pre-arranged step over. That's not how it works. And we was actually winning that game for most of the game. My son scored a couple of goals, and it ended up 4-4 in the end. But that was a good example to me that, the isolated drills look like they're good and they look productive, but they do not really translate into matches. And I've seen it with my son's team, and I've certainly seen it with the team that I am now currently coaching, is that doing things like, for example, getting the ball and shoot, everyone gets a ball and then they put it on the ground and then they step back and then they run in and take a shot and ping it in the top corner. That's lovely that you can do that. And maybe that's helpful for free kick situations. But in an actual, I've seen this so many times that there are some players who, in the warm-ups, they can ping it top corner there, bing, 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 when they're doing these stationary shooting under no pressure whatsoever. But come a match, that's never going to happen apart from in a free kick. And these people don't really score many goals because they haven't practiced. They've not had enough experience of playing, of getting a shot away under pressure when someone's actually in your face trying to get the ball off you. So that's one of the things that, one of the first few things that I started to learn and thought, ooh, this is interesting. And I'll talk about it. Yeah, so there's this thing called ecological dynamics. I'm going to have to go into this into a bit more detail to explain it more simply. But the basic idea is behind ecological dynamics is that you learn. The way that you learn a skill is not by extracting that one little skill from its context. The way that you learn skills and technique, if you want to call technique the individual little motor movements, like the ability to trap a ball or the ability to manipulate the ball to get out of pressure situations and all that sort of stuff. And then skill being the fact that you can do something like trap the ball and then pass it to another player, and you can interact with each other. The way that you learn skill, according to ecological dynamics, is by being in the situation, being in the environment, because you learn the skill, you learn the techniques and so forth by being in an environment that forces you to learn those skills, to do those skills. And there's this brilliant sort of set of ideas they have, for example, that an environment gives you affordances or opportunities. So if you're in an environment that gives you the opportunity or kind of forces you to into certain types of movements, that's the best way to bring the movement out of yourself. Yeah, you notice you're in the movement, you're in a match, for example, a small-sided game, 2v2. If you're trying to, for example, if children are trying to learn how to dribble past players or to shield and protect the ball, the best way for them to learn that is to, for example, put them in 1v1s or 2v2s, one player on one end, one player the other end. They're trying to score into 2 small goals, for example. And you do that loads of times. And what you do is that in that situation, you don't really have to tell a child, oh, what you need to do is put your foot on it and then you drag it to the left and go. No, because when they're in that situation, they will keep having opportunities that will lead them to, to develop those skills, to develop that ability to get past the player. I think that's probably, and so ecological dynamics is all about, is a fascinating body of research, which is all about, which has a very, a very revolutionary impact on how we see our role as coaches or as parents or whoever it might be. So, like I mentioned with those drills, we used to the coach standing there, right, boys, what you need to do, you need to go here and you need to go there. Right, Jamie, you see the ball here? If it comes here, what should you then do? Go over there. Yeah, you should then go over there. And then Marcus, when he goes over there, what should there's that. It's like Sergeant Major type approach. It's a dictatorial, very top-down approach to coaching. And particularly at the very, very young ages, when children are you got to remember that children at very young ages, 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10, they're still developing their motor skills. They're still developing how to move their bodies, how to coordinate their body movements. They're still learning how to get their balance. They're learning how to, they're learning agility. They're developing their agility. Some of my team, you see them, their little legs, they're 6 and 7 years old. Their little legs, some of them are so stiff. They can't really turn their legs properly. They can't bend their legs. They're flat on their feet. Do you know what I mean? They've got no bounce, no suppleness, no agility. They're only 6 and 7 years old. Of course they can't yet do that. And in a particular context of football. And what was I saying? So the role of the coach is not to, if you're just trying to tell children, right, do this, do that, do this, you're just talking to their heads. You're not really, that's not going to translate down into their bodies, and certainly not in an actual fluid, chaotic situation in a football match. So the role of a coach, as I'm starting to develop myself and understand, is that, my job is not to tell players what to do at every single given moment. My job is to design environments, so design training situations where they are playing a whole load of football, and I'm using the design of the sessions to bring out certain key things which they need to understand. Game awareness, their awareness of the game, their awareness of game situations, their comfort and so, for example, one of the things we've been doing a lot recently is shielding practice. So I'll just put two of them together and I'll say, right, you guys have to keep the ball from each other for as long as you can. The reason I did that is because I saw in the matches they keep bunching together, because that's what children do when they're very young, but also they fall over. They fall over a lot. Partly because I've deduced because they're not used to physical contact. They're not used to the fact that when you have football is not just about, oh, let me kick the ball around. Football is using your whole body to protect the ball away from defenders, from who are trying to get the ball. So we do a lot of this shielding practice to get them used to that physical contact, And then, like I said, with the 2v2s, when we 1 versus 1s, for the dribbling and the getting past players, that's a key skill that they need to be able to do. And then we play a lot of small-sided games, 4 versus 4, where they get constant opportunities over and over and over again. But in a match context, no situation in the match is ever the same, unlike in the drills. It's shaping the environment for them to play, to pick up the skills as a result of the environment that they're in, the matches that they're in. That's the best way to get the skills and to develop their skills and to develop their technique. And I want to talk now about the follow-on from that, is that I see my role as a coach led by this, these ecological dynamical ideas and other ideas which I've come across, My role as the coach is not to micromanage these players. My role as the coach is not to say, right, John, go over here. Now pass it left. Now pass it right. Good. Now push forward. Somebody get back. Now pass it through the middle. That's how I have been. That's just what you just think that you do I think a lot of that comes from being a football fan, is my thought. So like parents, when I was watching my eldest son, and there'd be a lot, and I'd record them sometimes. I record him playing, and then listening back, and I'm like, this guy, i.e. me, needs to shut his mouth. It's just non-stop. Right, now do this. Now push back. Now go here. Now go there. And there were a couple of times I remember that my son was like, getting annoyed because I was telling him to run back, and then the coaches were telling him to run forward or to run to the side or whatever. And I realized, listen, this is information overload. He's in the match situation. He needs to be able to learn for himself what to do. I need to shut up, and I'm learning this as well with my own team as well. I've started to really take a step back, never bother with telling. If a player, for example, tries to pass it and it goes out of touch, he knows it went out. He knows it didn't work. Why do I need to tell him that? I don't need to tell him that. He knows it didn't work. So be quiet, And so this goes on to the three things: autonomy, creativity, and adaptability. And oh my goodness me, I'm also a manager in my real life, my work life. And this is something that I've become really super sensitive about with regard to the people that I line manage. How much are people these days able to make decisions for themselves? How much are they able to think through situations for themselves and come up with solutions to situations that they're facing? I would say that potentially there's a little bit of an issue with younger people these days, younger millennials and Gen Zs in particular, whereby there potentially is a tendency to just ask questions straight away when they come across a situation that they've not come across before, instead of taking that little bit of time to think it through for themselves and come up with some suggestions, some ideas about how they might be able to fix it, and to try those things out first before going, can I, Ellie, this has happened, I don't know what to do, or this has happened, full stop, and then asking me to do it, So this is kind of what I'm getting at, that all these things I'm talking about with regard to sport, these are all things that are not just even sport things. These are things that cut right across. So autonomy. These days, unfortunately, children have very little freedom at all. Whereas back in my day, from about, what would I say? Probably from about 8, 9 years old, I was already going out and just playing. Yeah, often my brothers would be sort of near or nearabouts, but I was out playing, and certainly from like 10, 11 years old, I'd just go out and play with my friends. You don't really see that happening that much these days. We would play football or cricket on the streets and just play until it got too dark. We would do all these kinds of things. Nowadays, children are spending hardly any time outside, certainly not outside when they're not at school. Most of the time they're spending indoors. There are days, us parents, we mean well, but we massively overschedule their lives. So you've got swimming on this day, football on that day, karate on this day. There's something almost every single day of the week. It's schedule. How much time do children get to just do what they want to do? How much time, how many opportunities do children have really in their lives to make their own decisions about what they're going to do? I was thinking yesterday, my son was showering, my youngest son, and I was like, right, come on, it's time to come out. And I thought to myself, my goodness me, they can't even shower. They can't even decide. They can't even decide how long they're going to have a shower for, So football, sport is that one place. I heard someone say this, really, really good point. When they're on the pitch, that should be one of the places where, unlike any other moment in their lives, waking moment of their young lives, they have the opportunity to make their own decisions. And of course, it's going to be messy. It's going to be very, very messy, because us as adults, we know how it should, yeah, if you pass it there and do this, then that'll be how you want to do it. But if we just keep telling children what to do, how are they going to learn themselves what to do? Yeah, and it takes trial and error. It's like you wouldn't tell a 2-year, you wouldn't tell a 1-year-old, a baby who's a toddler who's just starting to learn to walk. You wouldn't be like, no, what you need to do, you need to put your foot there, right? Yeah, then put your other foot there. No, put your other foot there. Yeah, now in the next. That's idiotic. You would never do that to a child, or you wouldn't tell a child, right? What you need to do now, you need to put the food in your mouth. Now chew it. Now like this, up, down, up. No, they'll just develop it. They'll learn how to do it in time. And it's a little bit like that. Obviously, it's not quite so straightforward as that, but it's a little bit like that with sport, a little bit like that with football. You've got to give children at a very young age in particular, need to have that time and space to develop through trial and error ways of getting out, of achieving their goals on the football match, ways of learning how to protect the ball, ways how to learn how to go past the player, how to shoot, how to score goals, how to protect the goals, And then out of that as well, this is one of the really important things. So what I've started doing with my team, I started like this, and then I got scared because I basically said to them, listen, just in their first match, I think it was, I was like, or the second match, I basically said, right, you decide where you're going to go on the pitch. You don't need me. It's 5-a-side. You just decide, okay? And, it was scary because they just all chase after the ball and leave themselves wide open at the back. There were a couple of teams we played against that they had really quick and very good players who could just run around them and dribble forward. And so I quickly reverted to, no, right, you defender, you on the wing, you on the right wing, you on the left wing, you up front there, and you need to, and barking orders, constantly barking. But the problem is that if I keep doing that and keep telling them, especially during the match as well, they're not learning, So I've eased back a bit. I've given them the basic shape. I want them to play a diamond formation. Think about a diamond formation, one at the back. And now I'm really, in our last match, I basically said, listen, you decide who's going to go where, and you just need to make sure that someone hangs out at the back. And so that's going to take a bit of time. We're going to concede a lot of goals doing that, although we're scoring a lot of goals at the moment. And I'm convinced that over time, as the weeks and months and years go by, they will develop into much, much better players because I've allowed them or they've been able to develop their decision-making abilities and their game awareness through, under my kind of watchful eye, if you like. Related to that is creativity. Now, giving children autonomy in any sphere of life, not just in football, implies a certain level of risk because when children are trying new things, they are going to get things wrong. And it's very, very important for adults in particular to pull ourselves back and stop focusing so much on getting to the right answer. That's what we want, isn't it? I think adults, particularly in football, we are too results focused, immediate results focused. So we're like, we want to win this game and I know how to win it. So this is what you need to do. And then the next game, I know how to win this game. This is how we're going to do it. But over time, like I said, the children's own decision-making skills are not being developed. It's like a muscle they're not using. And so it just atrophies. And what's going to happen when they're now playing with 100 people watching the match and they can't hear the coach? How are they going to make their own decisions? So we've got to give children that ability to take risks and to try things and to let them have that process of searching and exploration. That's creativity. Creativity is about having that confidence and knowing that they can try things and get it wrong, and that's okay. There's a really good saying I've got to make sure I drill into the boys, which is that getting things wrong is part of getting things right. Yeah? That's how you learn. And funnily enough, the amount of times that I've barked an instruction out, I've been like, no, don't kick the ball to him, it's too far, he's never going to get there. And then the guy kicks it to that one, it actually does get there, and I'm like, yeah, shut up, Eddie. Even talking about, having someone back all the time. The other day, I was watching a video of our last game and everyone ran forward and I was like, oh, here they go again, pushing forward all the time. And then, of course, one of the players who did push forward, my son, got the ball, dribbled into the area, done an excellent cut back and slotted it into the bottom corner. I'm like, what do I know? So imagine if in that situation I'd have shouted and hollered and told him to get back, because he was probably the one who should have been back, he wouldn't have scored that goal. He wouldn't have experienced that, and he wouldn't have had that affirmation within himself that, yeah, I can try things and they will work sometimes. And that's how you learn, you know? So it's a little bit similar to, I've made a video about mathematics. I've made a few videos about mathematics, and it's a bit similar to mathematics, whereby, you know, you as a parent or you as an adult teacher might be trying to force this child to use a particular algorithm to solve an addition equation. But the child might have another way of doing it that actually doesn't need that particular algorithm this time round. And that's perfectly fine. Let children work out what way works best for them, you know? So creativity, you've got the last thing as well is adaptability. So if children who develop their autonomy, who develop their autonomous muscles, they're able to take control and make their own decisions, are children also who are going to be the more creative ones, because they've had the time and space to be able to develop their own decision making. And then that means that when they're in situations that they haven't had before, they're not used to, they will be used to coming up with their own decisions and their own solutions to those problems. This is problem solving, isn't it? And so, you know, if they play against different types of players or different types of teams, bigger players, for example, then you know, they'll be like, okay, cool, no, it's just a different type of challenge. You know, if they're constantly solving problems in their training, then they're not going to be at all fazed by solving a problem in a match, are they? You know, so these are 3 exceptionally important characteristics or traits: creativity, adaptability, and autonomy, which in a football context, in a sport context, are extremely important and could, you know, can, if we look at football and other sports in a more holistic way, and if we start to understand that football is a tool for their development, not just their development on the pitch, but off the pitch in real life as well, football can become a very, very powerful teaching tool. I've got here as well, confidence and emotional regulation is another very, very, very important element. I heard someone say, made a really good point, that playing a match in front of people watching the match, you're putting yourself out there as a 6, 7, 8-year-old. You're putting yourself out there to potentially fail in front of an audience. How often do adults do that? You know, public speaking is probably, like, adults very rarely get that opportunity to go out there and basically have their mistakes on show for everybody to see. And I think that children need absolute encouragement and celebration for the mere fact of even going out on the pitch in the first place, you know, because that's an emotionally intense environment, situation. And the more they do that, and our job as parents and adults is to make sure that we are not heaping too much pressure on them, but we're giving them the freedom and letting them know it's cool to make a mistake. Mistakes are part of success. You won't succeed if you don't make mistakes. Try different things, try new things, express yourself, enjoy yourself, you know? And that I can see would have just such an important impact on children as they're developing themselves, developing emotionally, to have a space where they can experience that emotional pressure and overcome it, you know? My son's first match, so he's been playing football, my youngest son, he's been playing football for a while in the sort of, the pre-team part of it. But when we played our first match, it was against another team, the other team in our club even. And but because all the parents were there watching, bless him, when it came time for him to go on the pitch, he was crying, he couldn't play. He played 3 minutes of a 40-minute match. That shows you how intense that situation is. And I said to him, listen, that's all good. You played 3 minutes. Next time around, he had to play the whole game because we only had 5 players. And he played the whole game. And I showered him with praise and adulation to let him know what a magnificent thing that he just did. There's another player who, you know, during training and stuff, often he'd be crying and just sitting out and not getting involved. After a couple of sessions, no crying whatsoever, always getting involved. And I made it clear to him, listen, there was a time where you were hardly even taking part in the training. Now you're taking full part in the training, and that's success, that's progress. And he takes full part in the matches as well. And it's about resilience. This is one of the most important things. Resilience, dealing with setbacks. Football is beautiful and brilliant for giving those lessons, those opportunities for children to learn the lessons of building their resilience, you know? And this is why I think, like I said, sport is a very, very potentially powerful tool for children to develop themselves. Now, to wrap up, advice to parents: if you're a parent and your children are getting into a sport, my advice to you is that don't just put them into any old club. Really pay attention, focus on some of the things that I've been talking about. Observe the coaching sessions. What are the coaches like? Are they giving the children, are they attentive to the children? Are they positive? Are they encouraging? Or are they barking orders non-stop? Are they joysticking? That's the term, joysticking, where the coach or the adults are basically pretty much trying to control every single movement of the players. Are they joysticking, or are they taking a step back and giving the children that time and space to develop themselves? What are the sessions like? If the coaching sessions are spent a lot of the time just standing about, I would suggest to you that you don't want to be part of that club, because especially at this time of year, I'm recording this in December 2025, when it's 3 degrees C outside and raining, you do not want your child to be standing around waiting for their turn to dribble in between a few cones before going back to the queue to stand around. No, you want your child running around for most of that time. Bearing in mind, they're not going to get that much running around time in life, unfortunately, unless you're very outdoorsy. So, and are they results focused? If that club or if that coach is focused on winning games at all costs, I would suggest, for me personally, I that's not the environment I'd want my child to go into, because that's gonna short circuit their development. That's gonna bypass their development, their growth, their learning, for the sake of basically massaging the egos of the coaches and the club. So watch out for those things. If you've got any, if you want to ask me any more questions, I'm a coach. I've only been a coach for about 5 months, but I feel like I can talk about these things with some level of experience and almost authority. But yeah, let me know if you've got any other questions on that. Now, to wrap up, I will say there are many dimensions to football that we can talk about, and I'm going to talk about. There are political dimensions to football as a game, as a sport, as a global sport. There are cultural dimensions. So, for example, you could talk about the style of play. The South Americans tend to have a different style of play to, say, Northern Europeans. Why? Well, it's to do with their environment and their culture. These are very interesting things which I find fascinating, and which actually are relevant to us as well, in particular as Black people here in the UK, because we come from a particular cultural background. And are we having conversations about, what are some of the things that, because of our cultural background and our heritage, we bring to the table with regard to football? I always think of someone like an Eberechi Eze of Arsenal. And for me, I look at him, and honestly, I look at him playing for Arsenal, and he looks like he's playing within himself. He's a shell, because he's having to be part of Mikel Arteta's structure. He's learning all these things, and it's fine and dandy. But Eze is a player that you want to have the freedom to be able to do what he did, for example, for England, when he did that first time shot from the outside the area, 25 yards, top bins, top corner. He did against his goal for Arsenal against Crystal Palace. Scissors kick from the edge of the box. Improvisation. Even his finishes for the hat-trick against Tottenham. What a lovely day that was. Improvisation. He's someone who you can't teach people to do those kinds of things. Those are things which he brings, because he is him. He's unique. Eze is unique. And I think that's something that I'd like to maybe talk about and think about a little bit more, is there something for us, certainly for children, and particularly for Black children, is there something that we can look at there that we can help our children to develop that individuality and that creativity, And then also international. So In a couple of weeks, we've got the AFCON, African Cup of Nations, starting up. I'm very interested in football in Africa. What's going on with football in Africa? African football is way, way, way behind, obviously, European and South American and North American football. You know, we're nowhere. I'm interested to know why that is. I'm interested to know why it is, for example, that the national leagues in our countries, what are they doing in Nigeria, in Senegal, in Mali and so forth? These countries that produce so many players that go and play in Europe, why are they playing in Europe? Why aren't they playing in Nigeria, Senegal and Mali and countries like that, South Africa? You know, so lots coming up. You know, I'm very much into football, and I think hopefully even for you guys who are not particularly into football, you'll kind of, you know, come along with me on this journey and see that actually it's not, I'm not talking about football per se. I'm just using football as a vehicle to continue what I do all the time, which is talking about culture, philosophy, politics, economics, and identity and all that sort of stuff. So, and then of course, representation. I've put here race representation. And I said that there are so many black players here in the UK. There are hardly any black managers, although Glasgow Celtic have just hired a black Canadian manager, which is interesting. So let's see how that pans out. But anyway, that's my thoughts on why I think football can be a very powerful tool for our children's development. I will flesh out a lot of these things in future videos. I look forward to hearing your thoughts about this, guys. So let me know what you think. Let me know your insights, and make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you sign up at eliwananda.substack.com. If you want to buy me a coffee, that's all good. You can do that by clicking on that, on the link in the description. And here, I've got other videos which you might find useful as well. So there's one here which YouTube will recommend, and there's one here which I think dovetails nicely with the subject of this video. Take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you soon. Salama, peace.